Okay. Welcome and good afternoon. Thank you for joining our webinar on using SOAR for transition age youth. The release of our new issue brief titled Ending Youth Homelessness, Using SOAR to Increase Access to SSA Disability Benefits for Transition Age Youth. Today's webinar is presented by the SAMHSA SOAR Technical Assistance Center at Policy Research Associates under contract to the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration of the United States Department of Health and Human Services. My name is Pam Hine. I'm a Senior Project Associate with the SOAR TA Center, and I'll be moderating today's webinar. Before we officially begin the webinar, I wish to introduce Kristen Lupfer, Project Director of the SOAR TA Center, who will give our welcome this afternoon. Kristen?
Pam, thank you all so much for joining today's webinar. We're really excited to have experts from across the country presenting today about how they have successfully served this unique and high-need population. We hope that you learn a lot, and if you aren't currently serving transition-age youth, that you consider how you can implement specialized programming to really meet the need in your community. So thanks for joining today. Pam?
Just a few housekeeping instructions before we begin. At this, all participants are in listen-only mode and will be muted throughout the webinar. Today's conference is being recorded and will be available for download on the SOAR website. There are a couple of handouts for this presentation, which you are able to download. If you just get the top of your screen, you will be able to download not only the PowerPoint presentation, but also our new issue brief. So we encourage you to do that. At the conclusion of the webinar, we will send you a link to an online evaluation. We value and appreciate your feedback and use it to improve and inform future SOAR webinars and activities. So we encourage you to complete it right after today's webinar. So let's review the agenda for today's webinar. Abigail Lemon, who is a project associate here at the SOAR TA Center, will be introducing to the SOAR community a new issue brief on transition age youth, which she authored. Next, Chris Coons, who is a SOAR local lead from St. Vincent de Paul Village in San Diego, will discuss and document those disabilities often seen in youth and walk through a mental health impairment listing. Then Raven Smith, who is a SOAR local lead from Pueblo, Colorado, will share his tried and true engagement strategies when working with youth experiencing homelessness. Finally, we will hear from Laura Kolb, staff attorney with the Homeless Advocacy Project in Philadelphia, better known as HAP, who will share the evolution of HAP's SOAR projects, which target transition age youth. We will have plenty of time for questions, so remember to use the chat icon on the computer to send in your questions. Please type your question into the Q&A panel located underneath the participant tab. When you are finished entering in your question, click send. We'll address as many questions as we can answer throughout the webinar. Another option for you is to also use your phone to ask a question. So at the end of the webinar, you will click the raise hand icon so we know to unmute the line. So before we begin, we would like to ask a poll question. Does their agency currently have a protocol or any distinguishable procedure for providing SOAR services to individuals who are categorized as transition age youth, which is between the ages of 16 and 24 years old? So multiple choice, yes, no, but would like to start, and you're just really unsure at this point. So we'll take a few seconds to answer. All right, we'll close in a second. So we think that, about half of you do not have a procedure in place. So I think that this webinar then is much needed, and you'll get a lot of information from our presenters on really how to go about focusing a SOAR project on this population too. Again, thank you so much for taking the time to answer the poll. the mic over to Abigail Levin, who will begin her presentation and introduce you to the new issue brief. Abigail?
SAMHSA is very happy to announce the release of our newest issue brief on SOAR and transition age youth. We know that this is a population that many of you currently work with, and our goal with the issue brief is to demonstrate how SOAR can work for this population and to highlight a couple programs across the country that are doing a great job in implementing SOAR with transition age youth. The issue brief also has engagement tools, common factors surrounding youth homelessness, excerpts from sample medical summary reports, and Social Security programs that are aiming to make youth more self-sufficient. Purposes, transition age youth are commonly defined as youth ages 16 to 25. They are maybe homeless or at risk of homelessness and transitioning out of the foster care system into homelessness or being at risk of homelessness. What we know is that this population often presents with unique service challenges. These are often too old for child services, but they may not be ready or eligible for transitional adult services. We also know that there are many common factors that contribute to youth homelessness. Among these include mental health issues, substance use. Many transition age youth will experience a lot of trauma throughout their life. Lack of education contributes to it, as well as lack of employment experience and opportunities, unstable home life, or transition out of a foster care or juvenile detention center without family or community supports. Look at some statistics. The 2014 point-in-time count estimated that there were about 45,000 unaccompanied children and youth experiencing homelessness nationwide. Now, of that, the vast majority were adults ages 18 to 24, but a significant portion of those individuals were under the age of 18. What's striking about these statistics is also that over 25% of that 45,000 individuals experiencing homelessness were in or had some type of previous engagement with the foster care, group home, or juvenile detention systems. So you can really see that this could possibly be lack of supports coming out of these systems is a huge catalyst for homelessness among transition age youth. But what we know is that it's oftentimes very difficult to depict this population accurately in terms of homeless statistics, and this population is oftentimes underestimated or undercounted. This could be due to couch surfing or the fact that they're just not really a part of the traditional homeless count. So how can SOAR and the SOAR process aim to complement working with transition age youth? We know that engagement is a huge part of the SOAR process, and typically engagement with this population will be extended due to their mistrust of the system or mistrust of adults. It's very important to have a non-judgmental approach when working with these youth and always create a safe space where engagement process is able to occur. It's also important to recognize that the look of youth experiencing homelessness may be very different from that of a traditional adult experiencing homelessness. Oftentimes, youth will take great pride in their appearance because they want to avoid being exploited or taken advantage of on the streets. In your engagement process, we also want to recognize, understand, and utilize trauma-informed care. Many homeless youth may come from a very traumatized background, and we want to be as sensitive as we can to this aspect of their life. So let's back around to the SOAR process. Through the SOAR process, we strive to provide complete application packets to the Social Security Administration. Really look to paint a picture of our applicant and depict their functional capacities very accurately. Youth, this can be extremely important due to the fact that they may or may not have a very short work history. Demonstrating functional limitations is a key component of any application when working with youth. How we do this is through juvenile detention records. We do this through school records, engaging with applicants, really telling their story, and framing their decision-making in terms juxtaposed to a typical adolescent or typical youth. There are SSA programs that aim to assist youth. So some of them include SSI for disabled children, SSI for children who are transitioning to adults, benefits for disabled adult children, aid out redetermination, and work incentives for youth. So let's review just a couple of these. Age 18, young adults who are eligible for SSI as children will be reevaluated to determine whether or not they qualify for benefits under a more restrictive adult definition. This redetermination process is essential for many youth who will continue to need the support of SSI as they continue on into adulthood. Now, children, disability is determined by marked severe functional limitations, where adults, disability is measured against the applicant's ability to work or perform at substantial gainful activity. This is documenting a youth's functional capacity is so very important to the SOAR process. Additionally, SSA has established provisions for children and SSI recipients for aging out of the foster care system at age 18 and facing a loss of those financial supports. Research has suggested that youth nearing this transition are particularly vulnerable and maintain a much higher rate of disability when compared with their peers. Generally, an applicant who is about to turn age 18 can apply for SSI 30 days before their 18th birthday. However, SSA will accept applications for youth in foster care up to 90 days prior to their 18th birthday and their exit from care. Social Security Administration also has numerous employment incentives for youth. Some of these include a student earned income exclusion, individual development accounts, and plans to achieve self-support, all which are outlined in the issue brief, which I genuinely hope you'll read and enjoy. So, Pam?
Thank you so much, Abby. And let's remind folks that you can download the issue brief to get more detailed information on what Abby presented in her overview today. So thanks again. Chris Coons from San Diego, who will focus his presentation on documenting disability and, again, walking you through one of the mental health listings. Chris?
Hi, everyone. Chris Coons, and I work at the Nepal Village out here in San Diego. I'm you guys most about documenting impairments. So, but real quickly, our local SOAR model, we've called it Hope San Diego. It's a partnership between my agency and the Corporation for Supportive Housing here in San Diego. All right. Documentation for young adults. So most of my presentation will focus on documentation, but like Abby mentioned, the category of transition age youth includes folks under the age of 18, but for most of my presentation, I'll focus on those that are 18 and above. So we're going to talk about a couple different things. First is the SSA Blue Book. So the Social Security Administration, they actually give us this book that includes everything we would need to know to understand how they are going to make a determination on a certain case. So actually available online. It's not a book anymore, so you can get on, Google, type in, SSA Blue Book, and it'll pop up. Found it to be really user-friendly. There's search functions that you can, type in certain notices, and it'll hopefully bring it to it. The SSA Blue Book is a little different than your DSM criteria, so just kind of be aware of that. But I'm going to talk about medical sources, one with doctors, all including non-medical sources in our documentation, and then at school programs and then find their work history. So when we think of medical sources, for someone to be eligible for disability benefits, they have to have a type of medically determinable illness. It has to be documented by a MD or a PhD. Now, this illness could be from when they were a child, or it can also be as an adult. So as evidence that SSA will accept as far as medical sources, they will accept as evidence from non-MDs or PhDs. It could include nurses or physician's assistants, occupational therapists, physical therapists, etc. So accept that stuff. However, it still be initially documented by an MD or a PhD. So as you think about where we would collect some of these medical sources from, I want to think about all of the places where you might go to receive some type of medical treatment. So we're obviously looking at, clinic. Do they access any health clinics that we could get medical records from? What hospitals have they been hospitalized at or do they go to? Usually there are school medical records that you would want to try to track down, and we'll talk about schools here in a second. We have medical records from jail as an adult or even the juvenile justice system as a child. So, asking the youth, hey, when you have been, did you see a psychiatrist? Did you see a doctor? Are good questions to ask. On working with doctors, I think a lot of our programs that we work with, we have connection to a doctor. Maybe we're on an ACT team, or some of our programs maybe have access to or partnerships with some type of center. So I think most doctors, as they go through they get trained in documenting a lot of the symptoms. They document the diagnosis and what are the symptoms of that diagnosis. They do a lot of training in including functional information in their notes. So here at Vincent's, we have a health clinic on site, and we actually train our doctors to include functional information when they're documenting medical records. So they're getting those symptoms. So they're trying to put some functional information, which I'll talk about in a few minutes. That is really the key when getting someone approved for disabilities. So, if you have the opportunity to work with doctors to really get them to include that functional information, it's super important and can make a difference. So, what you hear is an example of actually a doctor's note in our clinic for a youth that was 24 years old. There's some spelling errors, so our doctors aren't the greatest spellers, but good example of our doctors trying to include functional information into the notes. So other sources that we want to think about outside of traditional medical sources, you always want to think non-medical sources. So these can be from family members. Have family members been around the person and can attest to some of their struggles. Think of friends, neighbors. Maybe there's a teacher that really involved with this person. Maybe school programs. This person's been involved with some of those things. Boys and girls clubs that they could kind of talk to about their limitations. Other things like church. Maybe there's a pastor that's really involved in this person's life. And so I know a lot as far as documenting non-medical sources. What we've done here is ask those places, hey, would you mind write a letter that talks about your observations of this person and how you know this person. I think for the non-medical sources, we really don't think about that when we're using a SOAR, but if we can, some things are really helpful in putting the pieces together regarding functional information. Or another place you definitely want to look for documentation. You can track down if they've been in vacation, while they're in school. If you can track down some of those records, they had IEPs that you can track down, which will can talk to some of that functional limitations. About college or post-secondary programs. Did this person attend college? And something happened and didn't go so well. What happened? Or other post-school programs. Just common medical condition and related listings. So most of these are on the left-hand side. You have a lot of your mental disorders. And the right-hand side, asthma, epilepsy, and I think we're applying for, youth, especially homeless youth. They might have some mental health stuff going on, and they have some physical health stuff going on as well. We want to try to include all of these things. We're trying to gather documentation. This is an example of listing in the Blue Book. So this is the adult listing for schizophrenia or other psych disorders. So I'm going to walk us through really quickly, but so we understand how the documentation really impacts the decision making here. So if you look at it, this A criteria, it's the second bullet down, and this is they have some type of medical documented persistence in one of the following things. So in their medical records, they have to have something that's, should they have delusions or hallucinations, or dysfunctional behavior, low thinking, or emotional withdrawal. Again, this is just for schizophrenia. So the A criteria is really those symptoms. They have to have those symptoms in the medical records along with that diagnosis. Criteria. This is the key. This is I think the hardest thing to track down in our documentation. So B criteria really looks at the functioning. So this person has the symptoms of schizophrenia, but you guys all know people with schizophrenia can work, and so we really need to connect those symptoms, and those symptoms impact their ability to function, and specifically then to work. So they have their symptoms have to impair at least two of the following. So they have marked restrictions in activities of daily living, marked difficulties in maintaining social functioning, difficulties in maintaining concentration, persistence, or pace, or have demonstrated repeated episodes of decompensation. So as we think about our documentation, we always got to have that A criteria, which is the symptoms, but in our documentation, we got to have that B criteria, which is the functioning. And that's why it's so important to work with doctors. It's so important to track down those school records, track down those non-medical sources, because I think that some of those things can really talk to the functioning. Criteria. This is a criteria out of the A and B. I'm not going to go too into in depth, but this is really showing extreme 2 years duration as it costs more than a minimal limitation because of their schizophrenia. We'll touch on is work history. Now, when we have applications for young adults, some will not have an extensive work history, but some will. And I think we really want to think about, do they have a work history? And if they do, if they have past jobs, we were very specific about what those jobs were. What were the duties? Did they supervise anybody? How to interact with coworkers? Why did the job end? We really want to look at those things. Did it involve in any type of vocational training? What were those trainings? How did it go? Maybe do a history of vocational training, but they had some of the, on-job training or community-based instruction. So maybe trained in to do a specific job, but they needed a lot of support. So really understanding what those things were, how much support do they need, how much extra instruction do they get, a very structured and supportive environment. Last thing we want to think about, if they haven't done past jobs or vocational training, maybe a lot of our youth have volunteered in the past. What were some of those volunteer opportunities that they did? What roles? Some of the things they had to do. Did they have to show up at certain places on time and perform certain tasks as being a volunteer? Think about work history and volunteering, and when thinking about young people, I know it's because they have an extensive work history, we might just sometimes forget about this piece. Work history and what happened can really help with adopting that functional piece of be someone approved for disability benefits.
Thank you so much. We appreciate all the work you've put into documenting disability for transition age youth and sharing, how to do that. So next, we have Raven Smith from Colorado, who will share his perspective on effective engagement strategies. Raven?
My name is Smith, and I work at homeless youth drop-in center in Pueblo, Colorado. That is SOAR, and is a bigger homeless service agency. Then we started within it a youth program that is primarily transitional age youth. Most of the youth that we see are in the 18 to 24 range. That we do see some on our side. We see some 25-year-olds, and we see a number of those that are like 16 and 17. And I was tasked with opening up this drop-in center and going into an outreach mode to really find how there were in Pueblo. And at the time, they thought there was somewhere between 30 and 52. And first year, we found about 150, and so far we've found about 450 in the Pueblo area who are experiencing homelessness. And so it's been very successful in terms of outreach, and then we started really working with how do we work with these youth, get them on streets and get them into different programs. What we're working on is SOAR, and we're in kind of a fledgling startup with, but we've spent a lot of time learning how to engage with these youth and really create a with them. And a couple of things that Abigail talked about, but just in more detail as we go. And one of the things is that these youth usually do not look like the older homeless population. They're very interested in not appearing homeless for the most part, and they at times it's hard to distinguish them from other youth. They hang out in the same places that the others hang out. In our case, the local library, the mall. They are engaged in the same activities. Many of them are still in school. They're 18 and they're in high school. I have about 8 clients like that right now. I have a whole other set of clients that's in college and they're homeless. They're sleeping out somewhere and keeping it all together in a way to at least stay in school. So some of their stories are really amazing. And but they have incredible numbers of difficulties. And the other thing I'm impressed about their situation is that they're often they come from a real variety of stories. Some of them are fleeing domestic violence or drug use in their home or previous living situations. Some of them are exiting foster care with no resources whatsoever, or coming out of jail or incarcerated for some reason, and they're relieved of the street with no family support, no community support. And sometimes it's just it's really kids who have had a kind of normal upbringing who sequence of unfortunate circumstances. Quit school, say could take a job and then lose the job and not have any backup. And so what happens is they lose their housing, and then they hit heat. And then this is something real common in Pueblo, is that within the 2 or 3 nights they'll often get mugged if they hit the heat without any resources and without knowing where anything is at. So they'll be robbed of whatever cash and their ID. And so one of the huge things that we struggle with all the time is they come in with no ID. You have to figure out how to get them a new one, which will need to access any services, including Social Security. So really the issue is about engagement. It's how do we engage with these youth in a real way. To do that, there's a lot of times individually have to be overcome. And one of those is straight up hunger and dehydration. And so if they haven't had any, if they don't know anything, if they hit the street without any information, they'll often not have known where the food pantries are. Even though in Pueblo you could get a lot of access to a lot of free food, they won't know where any of that stuff's at. They see the older homeless population, maybe even they find the soup kitchen, but they look at the line outside and those people are scared to them, and they're uncomfortable around them, and so they won't go in. And so sometimes the first thing you want to do is make sure that they're not hungry, because you can't interview them, talk about SSA, talk about housing, talk about anything really while they're serving and a little bit dehydrated. They don't have any focus, any concentration. So that's the first thing we work with engagement. First question out of our mouths is, are you hungry? Do you need some food? And we have an open kitchen where we have food every day during the times that we're open. And our food has become an incredible tool for us in terms of outreach. Like, nothing brings this age population will attention real quickly if you can give them food and give them something to drink. It's a big obstacle sometimes. And then lack of transportation. They might find us after a while, but a lot of them making appointments. So if you get involved in a process where they need to see other people, either the security office, social services, the Department of Motor Vehicles, whatever it happens to be, or to get to their health appointments, which is always a big one. For us, is that lack of transportation is a huge issue, and we say it, people talk about it, and it's like, yeah, it's really hard for them. But if you really stop and think about it, it can be a massive problem, because it takes hours to, even if you have the money for the public transportation system, it can take hours to get from one point to another across town, because you got to wait for schedules, you got to figure out where the schedule is, when it's come, you have to navigate through all that. And we're talking about people who don't have a lot of life experience and have a mental health, some mental health issues, okay? And that can be a huge deal. Another really big one is embarrassment in general. So they appear homeless, and they also can get really embarrassed if they haven't been able to get inside for a while. They might not smell so good, and they might need a shower, and they might need hygiene products, and it can be a little bit noticeable, and they know that. And so that can be an actual barrier for them to make it to appointments and that kind of stuff. If they're feeling really uncomfortable because they've been out for a few days, they not go to an appointment until they get an opportunity to get cleaned up. Lack of focus and ability to keep track of time and appointments. That's a big one. Again, this is something I run into a lot that people don't stop and think about it. Filling out forms, keeping track of time, staying focused on something. We're talking about people who are having mental difficulties. They're under incredible stress, anxiety, and they probably have a mental health diagnosis if we're working with them into SOAR. There's a chance of that. And so keep that in mind all the time, because the idea for us to kind of fill out a form is no big deal. But then it can be a huge deal. If they don't understand something on it, it might create some anxiety. The anxiety keeps them from being able to really focus on the form, and before you know it, you turn around, they're gone. Okay? And I've had that situation where I've actually needed to take clients to appointments and sit there with them and kind of talk them through, tell them what the form is saying, and ask them, the questions and let them fill it out, but read it back to them with me being there, so that they have the opportunity to actually complete the thing, because it might have been 2 tries at getting appointments. And turns out the problem is that they've got a ton of anxiety, and they don't really know what's going on when they're in a doctor's office or a mental professional's office, or we're at so they have a lot of anxiety around older people. That's the things that we've really established with the food and with our drop-in center. The drop-in center provides a safe environment where they can just be there and develop trust with the people. I'll talk about that more in a minute. That trust is really key, and once you have it, then bring them as many services as you can with the people that they now trust in an environment that they trust. It really can be really beneficial in terms of helping them engage more. In treatment facilities before, and those facilities definitely scare them. Might have had a really negative experience or been traumatized, been put in a treatment facility when they were extremely traumatized, and so memory of it can be really focused on negative, and they may not want to engage with medical professionals anymore. And the other thing is they worry about being stigmatized by their peers, and that can be another obstacle for them, is they don't want their people to know that they're homeless, that are their own age, because they get picked on, and they get taken into, it makes it difficult if people know. Strategies. So we kind of touched on a few of them, but the biggest thing I can say is trust, trust, trust. It's all about trust. How do we create trust with them? How do we earn it? How do we get them to engage us so that we can actually help them out? Because that is the biggest key, is how do we get that information? How do we get them into an interview so that we can start the SOAR process? Okay, sometimes it might take a little while. They don't know anything about who we are, and we have to show them that we're trustworthy. One of the ways we do that is to make resource access. When they first come in, their access to resources is almost zero barrier. They got to fill out a couple page form for us, and that's about it. Okay, and so they come in, they can access food, hygiene products, they can take a shower, they can get some bus passes if they need them, they can access the internet. Okay, so that we don't really ask them to do anything to do that. Okay, if they do, we'll ask them questions, we'll open some doors, but we don't make them do anything. If they don't want to, they can just come in and do that, as long as they follow some boundary-oriented rules around not being, no intimidating behavior, drugs, that kind of general practices in a public environment. Others can come in and access resources, and that's really great. I can't tell you how many of these kids have come in, and they first come in and they're like, we don't really know, and it's like, that's cool, go on in and have something to eat, fill out this paperwork, go have breakfast, and do that for a few days, 3 days, 4 days, maybe 2 weeks. And all of a sudden, but the whole time they're watching what's going on around them in the drop-in center, and they realize that people who engage with us we help them make a plan and start to engage back with society in a really productive way. And pretty soon start asking questions. They'll say, hey, I want to, and start to have a plan that we can then help them start engage with education, employment, and if that's not possible, then with mental health resources, with physical health resources, Medicare, Medicaid, things that they might need to do. We can help them through referrals and through mentoring and through direct resource access to get things, but it's about trust, and so we keep it really barrier, and that's one way that we can really them to begin to trust it. And being a safe environment, this is an ongoing struggle all the time, because on the street things are hierarchical, and it's easy for that to start to play out inside of a drop-in center. And so work with this all the time, really trying to maintain a safe environment, making sure no one's getting intimidated, making sure there's enough people, volunteers, and staff around to keep things on a more or less even keel. Things still spike on occasion, but we do everything we can to maintain a safe environment. One of the things that's true of that is giving a place that is about them. So we don't allow anyone other staff into an area where they're at. So it's 25 and under in our case. And we just made a policy decision to shift that down to 23 and under in the group space. So the 25-year-olds can still access services, but the group space is now 23. And the reason for that is even the older youth start to become a barrier. If they're stuck or they're not too much, they can become a barrier to the younger ones, because they're starting to hit that age at 24, 25, where they start to look like the adult homeless population, and they might be getting a little hard, a little hard-edged, and that is something that can create a barrier for the younger ones to even come in and engage with services. So we're always trying to monitor, like, is there anything in our world that's creating a barrier for them to trust us and engage with us? And one of the things that can be helpful is to have as much information at your fingertips as possible as a caseworker, somebody who's in the situation with transitional age youth, to know right off the top of your head as best you can where to send them for every different type of thing. Because you might only see them, if you don't do that, you might only see them once or twice, and then they disappear on you because they think you can't help. You can't help them. You got to show them that you can help them. One of the things we've done is done in networking with our local agencies for ID help, for SSA, for SNAP, for emergency services, food pantries, legal services, so that we know right away who can we get them to talk to if they're interested in something, who can help them to engage with, so that they can take a step right away, in this moment. Mentoring, I can't tell you, a lot of what I'm doing now is administrative relationship to this program, and I can't tell you I'm watching everything. One of the most important things we can do is give much personal time as possible. Case management time is key in terms of getting through their trauma, to a place where we can help them to engage and really helping them to move forward with everything. That hand-holding is what we need a lot of times to successfully re-engage with our society and to actually access the resources available to them. So this example, this is something that we did is put together an agency resource sheet. It's hard to read. I'm happy to send it to you or to through SOARworks here in a little while. The main thing is to notice that one of the things we do here is we for what the youth needs to engage with that agency. So they need an ID. Do they need a security card? Do we need direct referral? Okay, and we maintain as much personal contact with these other agencies as we can. So we send them there and send them there directly to someone with a recommendation from us, with an introduction from us to all of these different agencies. So build yourself a network sheet, a resource, an agency resource sheet is really key, again, so that you can send them where they need to go right away as soon as possible. There's Commissioner Pueblo, and thank you very much for listening.
Thank you very much, Raven, for your work and sharing your engagement strategies that I've been utilizing for so long and things to think about when serving transition age youth. Thanks so much. So just to gauge whether or not folks were working on other projects or listening to Raven or doing all the above, we have a poll question based on Raven's presentation. So which actions by the SOAR provider promote trust when working with transition age youth? So it's multiple choice. Those and see which ones make most sense. Close the poll and share results with you. We hope that the vast majority picked all of the above. As Raven said, these are all things that you really do need to focus on when you're engaging transition age youth, all really key to engaging folks through the process. See, the vast majority did pick E, so thanks so much. So right now we are going to present our last presenter, Laura Kolb from HAP in Philadelphia, who's going to focus on their SOAR referral model for transition age youth, who will, in her presentation, just want to make sure her microphone is unmuted so we can hear her.
Okay.
Laura,
okay.
You're good to go. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you so much. I'm really happy to be here this afternoon and for the chance to be part of this program. It is always so helpful to hear what's going on in other parts of the country and in other programs. And I've already gotten a lot of ideas, and I'm feeling a little inspired. But anyway, again, but today I'm here to talk a little bit about the SOAR project that we have here at HAP. That deals with youth who are aging out of care, transition age youth. It's partnership with the Department of Human Services here in Philadelphia, so we call it the DHS SOAR Project. We are our 6th year. I will say that it continues to be a work in progress. We are constantly, reevaluating and looking at things, and so today I kind of thought I would look back at our expectations were in the beginning, kind of where we started, what challenges have come up, how we've adapted, again, over time to try to, do a better job, meeting the needs of this population. And finally, just a few thoughts and things to consider as we all go forward. First of all, I forgot I have to do the slides, sorry. Okay, first of all, what exactly is the Homeless Advocacy Project? Our name causes, it's a source of confusion for many. It's hard to say. It's kind of misleading. We go by HAP for obvious reasons. Right now, there's probably somebody in our office answering the phone saying, no, we don't have housing. We're just lawyers. So we deal with that a lot. So what we are for the past 25 years, we have provided free legal services for homeless individuals and families here in the city. We use an outreach model, so it means that we meet our clients at local shelters and soup kitchens. Where we hold legal clinics. So we meet them where they're at. Folks can walk in, sit down, meet with a legal representative. We work on a variety of civil matters. So truly, that's meant like public benefits work. We have family law, like a Children and Families Project. We do a lot of ID work, something that Raven was speaking about, because almost none of our clients have ID documents. So we do a lot of work with that. We also have a Veterans Project. We do some credit work. So you get the idea. And all through our 25 years, we've, of course, lots and lots of disability work, because many of our clients are seriously mentally ill or have other, disabling conditions. Traditionally, this has meant representing clients at administrative hearings, who've been denied benefits. And kind of where HAP was at until 2007 with SOAR. And SOAR is a game changer, right? It was a way to get our seriously impaired clients what they really needed the most, which is income, and it was a way to get it fast. And thanks in large part to our really forward-thinking managing attorney, Michelle Levy, SOAR entered our lives back in, I guess, around 2007. I think it's here to stay. At the present time, we have several, really successful SOAR projects, and all of our staff are involved, in some capacity with SOAR. To give you a quick idea of some of the populations that we've served through the years, we started with through the Office of Supportive Housing here, the shelter system for single adults in shelter. We, for a time, had a SOAR project that dealt with heads of households who were receiving TANF, who were, ultimately eligible for SSI, which was, of course, a big increase in income. They were improved. The DHS SOAR project started in 2009. We also have a prison reentry SOAR project, and then we have about 3 or 4 other SOAR projects, which I don't have the time to go into right now, but pretty much always doing a lot of SOAR for a lot of different people in the community. But right now, that is really what our clients seem to need the most. So focus, of course, is the SOAR project. This grew out of a concern of DHS here about, everyone here really, about the rising rates of homelessness for youth that were aging out. They just weren't accessing the services that they're entitled to, kind of falling into homelessness really quickly after they were discharged from the child welfare system. So our starting point with this project was we targeted Philly youth who were adjudicated delinquent. They were 18 to 21 years old. They were mostly returning from out-of-home placements, and the idea was to get them referred, about 3 to 6 months at least before discharge. So this is its own slide because this is huge. We can make the medical determination prior to a youth discharge from care. So that was possible in certain circumstances, but we were able to get the medical determination much earlier in the game, which, and the advantages are obvious. It allows us to do a lot more discharge planning, when you have that guaranteed income, a lot of housing programs open up, and it gets us closer to that seamless transition placement back to the community setting, that we're striving for. And it avoids, hopefully, that gaps in services and supports that so many youth had faced when they got discharged, and they, really quickly were up in shelter or just, worse, on the street. Collaboration is the heart of SOAR, right? And partnerships. In case, there always has to be partnership between SOAR providers and Social Security, and also here, us and a public agency. In this case, it's DHS. So as we were getting this project up and running, it was a lot of talking, a lot of meetings, big place. This is a kind of a crappy picture of it. That's a building on the first day of spring in all the snowstorm. But it's huge. They deal with, I want to say, about 100,000 families a year in some capacity. Hundreds of youth are discharged regularly. So they've got a lot going on, but they have identified this as one of their major concerns, and they've certainly remained committed to the project, throughout all of its permutations. So we have this agreement. We're going to offer this service, but, where should we start? So the first thing we had to do is publicize it. No one knows about it at this point. No one really knows SOAR. Some people know SOAR for adults, but this was new in the children's system. The word out, I went on the road. I was at meetings, trainings, making calls, emails, pretty much just harassing people trying to talk about this service that we could offer. And we would go out again, follow-ups with whomever we had met with or talked to. It went on for a while. And this, should be really simple. I'm thinking this is a great plan. The youth are out there. They're in the system already. They're adjudicated delinquent. They're much, our control. All we have to do is connect the dots. This is, thinking it's going to be a referral-based model. The applications for DHS knows the youth. They're going to identify them for appropriate use and refer them. We'll do the SOAR intake, and we're going to, the usual process, gather evidence. And this is a step that really had me happy, because I was thinking, okay, here's kids that are in our deaths. They're getting on site. The records are right there. The data is right there. This is going to be, it's a package. It all comes together. It's going to be so streamlined. And we'll file and win is what I'm thinking. But things didn't go exactly as planned, as they hardly ever do. It really happened, and surprisingly enough. It was abysmal referral rates. 4 referrals that first contract term. It was about a 10-month term. All those cases. And the applications were filed, and we got approvals in real short periods of time. One of the cases was decided in 7 days, one 21 days, 14 days for one. Then we had one outlier where it took 70 days. But it ended up being an average of 30 days. So that part did work like that. Thinking what next? What are we? Where do we go from here? So of course, where you go is back to the beginning, and you reevaluate and adjust and think about what you can be doing differently. How can you get the referral flowing? Obviously the word was not out enough, or somehow things are not getting connected like they should. So nothing to do at that point except stay up late and listen to Willie Nelson. Well, not really. There was nothing to do but up and get back on the road, basically. So, of course, that meant more meetings, more phone calls, emails, every conversation with pretty much anyone that I would see was all the time. I really think, by then some people were running away when they saw me coming. But out of all this, changes, were made. Project that made it, much more viable. Whoops. Sorry, I got excited. It's a clicker. So this didn't happen all at once. This slide kind of summarizes steps that were taken, over the past few years, the way that, way things evolved to how they are now. So one of the most significant changes we were able to broaden the scope of the project, because we began to hear from, caseworkers and from on the dependency side of the child welfare system. And, they had a lot of youth aging out that had disabilities, and that seems really SOAR appropriate. So after discussion with DHS, we were in agreement that we could include dependent youth, in a pool of the youth that we would service. So that opened it up to the delinquency side and the dependency side. Also were able to increase capacity. Our low numbers and slow start, we were given the authority to provide services to an even larger number of youth, which was great. And the payoff from all this, was increased referrals. It did work, it did what it was supposed to do. We started getting, another way that we kind of combated the low referral rate is we really solicited referrals from a lot of different sources, not just from the immediate GPOs or caseworkers. And I think that's out of order, but here are the referral sources that could be really important to the project are listed here. You can see like some supported living programs, RTFs, outpatient, case managers from wherever. Some sad ones on here. It true, like shelters, some referrals still come from there, meaning that we somehow missed the youth. Several, same thing. But we've actually, we've done much better. So now we got to go back to results. So we did get results after all that. This is a few years for us to kind of see forward trend in the number of referrals that we're getting and the number of cases that we're able to file. So this chart is meant to show, let's see, how many we filed is the green bar. So look at that little pathetic 4 during the first year. The orange shows the number of days from application to approval. So you can see that we've steadily been filing more and more, not always up, but we're making forward trends, I think. We're well on our way this year. This is year to date. We have 4 filings. We'd definitely be able to reach a goal of 66 by the end of the fiscal year. Now, this also has been increasing on the time to process each of these cases. That's probably, I have some theories, but that's definitely a topic for another day. But 7 days is still, in the larger scheme of things, is still pretty good. Traditional application for SSI would, could take up to 1.5 years, 2 years. Let's see. So we get fast. Okay, so brings us to some closing thoughts. After these 6 years of working on this project, I had 182 filings altogether, 13 denials, technical, some of the kids were lost, and we were not able to make a strong enough case, and so, we took those on to the appeal stage. Back at all the youth that have passed through HAP in the last years, I just close with a couple things that we've learned and, some things to think about, as we move forward. And supposed to be a referral model. That was like the name of the rotation, and that's our project. It's done a referral model. But really, it's obvious that, outreach never ends. None of this happens without outreach on every level. The referrals, unfortunately, are never just like raining down. It takes people to be out and about and making connections. So contact is going to count. I really learned to not underestimate the power of word of mouth, because it's amazing just how word ripples out and comes back from all these different directions. So definitely keep in mind. Flexibility is something that we talk about at HAP in general, and this flexibility that I'm thinking about here would extend to both youth and colleagues. With colleagues, I get a fair amount anyway of last-minute referrals, and the child might have been AWOL, was non-compliant, then they suddenly show up at their court hearing, months later, no one's had any time to plan. It's kind of like a crisis. Of course, we try to be as accommodating as possible. If we can grab the youth, then we will make the best of it. Even, the referral did not happen quite in the timely way we would have liked. As far as flexibility with youth, what I would say is this picture didn't come out exactly right, because if you look, it's a picture of a corner of our lobby in the building where the HAP offices are. And in the corner is where I found a young woman one morning when I got to work. It's like a cold January morning. She curled up on the floor over there. Our guard, Al, had let her in to wait inside, until the office opened, because it was like 10 degrees out. She was 18. She'd been sleeping on the street, or actually in the basement floor of a local church. She's still in that same basement floor of the church. She had mental health issues. She had a lot of trauma in her past. What she did not have, was a referral, and that's fine. Heard something about some program that was supposed to be in this building, so she had found her way there. So, would encourage everyone, and I'm sure everyone does anyway, is no matter how you have your agency set up, whatever kind of procedures you have in place, I mean, it's really important to try to never turn anyone away. Oh, and there's one thing I on here, this one now, no blame, because sometimes it's really frustrating because you're thinking, all of these kids are out there, they're so needy, why can't we find them, how are any of them, getting by us, but for whatever reason, if a youth has slipped through the cracks, I'm just trying to pick up and go forward, because we all have the same goal, after all, and just try to do a better job next time. It really doesn't matter so much how it happened that a child or a youth ended up, not getting what they needed at the right time. Finally, just one more thing. SSI doesn't have to be the end of the story. That's kind of what I'd like to leave you with. This is something that I've been thinking about a lot lately. How do we build the best possible SOAR case, which kind of necessity is going to focus on limitations, as we've heard about today. But do that while still honoring and acknowledging all the strengths and the, potential that these youth all have. Because it's true, I'm sure the youth in our project they all have diagnosed conditions, they have significant functional limitations, they meet the criteria for disability under SSA rules, but really believe that we're doing them a grave service if SSA start to be seen, even unconsciously as, some life plan for them. This is not the way it should be. This comes up at almost every single SOAR intake that I do. There's always a point where the youth is expressing a desire to work, a lot of worry about his future, and, a desire not to be sick. And they're so young, and there's so much time ahead of them. So what we try to do is talk about SSI as a stepping stone to continued treatment, to stability, to housing, education, employment training, whatever they may need to move on, because we present that way rather than, looking at SSI as a forever way of life. So that's really all I have, and thank you again for having me. Contact information is here somewhere, yes. If you have questions or would ever want to talk about anything, I'm certainly open to that. It's always great to hear from people. So thanks again.
Laura, I'm sure you will be hearing from quite a few people. And also as a reminder, HAP is also featured in the issue brief, which we're profiled today. So be sure again to look for the issue brief, which will have more information about Laura's program and also a few others. So we do have plenty of time for our question and answer session. So Again, if you want to ask a question, please type your question into the Q&A panel lid underneath the participant tab. So when you're finished entering in your question, click send. Also, your question by phone, you can click the hand icon so we can unmute your phone. So again, we'll look to taking a few of your questions and then get them over to the presenters. Question here that came in our Q&A function. The question is, do you think that every transitioning youth meets the SOAR criteria? And if Laura would like to field that question on your thoughts.
I took a bite of a big pretzel, but I'm sorry.
A Philadelphia pretzel, no doubt.
I know, exactly. A soft pretzel. At least it wasn't a cheesesteak, right? So, is every transition age youth SOAR appropriate?
Yeah.
Was that the question?
Yeah. Get your perspective on that.
I would say no. In my experience, I know there's a tendency if someone has a rough start and just the trauma and abuse and just that has happened to a lot of our clients, and then they get to a point where they really have some limitations and they're really struggling. There's a tendency to want to be like, of course they should get whatever, like they've kind of earned whatever. But I have had, I guess what changed my mind is like I have had a couple cases where I had youth who had like a mental health diagnosis, had issues with like depression, anger, had no family, had been in placement since he was like 6. Now he was, 21 and about to age out, and his DHS worker had brought him in for an intake. Turned out that he had no interest in it. He actually had a job that he loved. He was working at a restaurant here, one of the best restaurants in the city, Amada, and he was getting trained, back in the kitchen with like world-renowned chefs. So he's working full-time, and his worker said, but it's only been for, like 7 months, but it was full-time. He was doing well, and he was so relieved when I was like, you're just not appropriate for this program. Like, there's no way I could make a case for that. He did have skills, and he's a typical applicant that we get, but I think there's some youth who they have struggles and they have had, they have things they have to overcome, but they're not necessarily disabled, in the sense that we would, we're talking about SI.
Sure.
And that's kind of my read.
Yeah, thanks, Laura. And I'm glad that you answered the question as no, because just as adults who are experiencing homelessness, we know that not all people who are homeless have disabilities. But with that said, doing the proper assessment, and asking those questions, about functioning and medical conditions is really important. So you want to do that assessment first, and we know that not every youth, will be eligible for disability benefits. So we do have a question here for Raven that we'd like Raven to answer. So being that Posada is newer, what are some of the challenges that you have had with gaining trust when and if you have limited personnel, limiting your time to give? Or are you planning to work through some of the challenges? So with limited resources, Raven, what are ways to develop trust as quickly as possible?
Again, it's interesting when we talk about resources, because we're just talking, like give them a granola bar on a regular basis. They can come to you for a pair of socks and, a little sack lunch. Some of these things don't take a lot of money to generate, just a little trust. And we do that out on the street with the street outreach too. We just give out water and granola bars and, our address and that thing. And so really, I think the most important thing in giving them is time, is staff time to help them connect with resources. And so if you can do that, I think is where I would put any focus on funding. Where I'm focusing on is how do I get more caseworker time. And in terms of, that agency resource sheet, wow, just doing that for your local home and being able to show them that and highlight the services that places they might be able to get services, that's a huge benefit to them.
Yeah, thank you. And I know a lot of the engagement that we do with SOAR is free, a lot of it, but again, time is probably one of the best thing that you can show youth and the SOAR applicant in general, so thanks. We do have a question here for Laura. People who are doing SOAR, are they attorneys or have different qualifications? Also, how many staff are working in your SOAR program to achieve your goal of 56 per year?
So we about, I want to say 10 attorneys here, but within my project, and almost all of us are kind of overseeing the SOAR project. So it's really me in the DHS SOAR cases, although other attorneys can step in and do needed. And I also have some law students that have a pro bono project that come in and work under my supervision and help with cases every semester and try to make those DHS SOAR cases. Wait, the rest of the question. So in 66, was that the question?
How many staff?
How many staff? Well, we're bare bones here. I mean, we have a person down the hall has a project where she's doing, 20 or 30 a year, and then so I really oversee the DHS SOAR project and doing most of the cases.
Laura? Okay. Yeah. And if no one, we share HAP's success around the country. Everybody always wants to hear about, how you get those great numbers. So I appreciate you giving some insight.
Yeah.
Into how
and we also, I didn't mention it in my presentation, but we have the outreach model and we have a small staff, but we partner with a lot of law firms here, and we have a core of like 200 to 300 attorneys in the city that volunteer at our legal clinics out in the shelters that we hold. And some of those attorneys also are SOAR trained, and they will help with cases. I just haven't myself had to do any DHS SOAR cases, but that certainly could be an option. We're not totally like an island. There are some other case workers and other service providers here in the city that have gone through the training, but I can speak to how many cases they've done because those are in other projects.
Okay. Another question came in for you, Laura, about partnering with mental health agencies. Can you talk a little bit about whether you do partner with mental health in Philadelphia?
Yes. One of the other programs that was on the bar chart is the Health Association, and so we work really closely with providers of mental health services here in our delivery of SOAR. So that's, referrals come all the time from, there's a lot of collaboration and a lot of working together with everyone. Philadelphia is great that way. It's a huge city, but it was a strong public interest community, legal-wise, but then also just with services that are provided, other service agencies. It's really collegial and, supportive, and everyone is really pretty much working together really well. So we have it, that makes things a lot easier here.
Laura, thanks for that. We have a question for Raven. The question is, where did you find the youth who are homeless or, homeless population, who are couch surfing and making it difficult to locate? Can you just talk a little bit about your efforts in outreach?
One of the biggest places, from some of the other youth is a great way to talk to the youth that do come in, like where's everybody hanging out at. As we figured out things like the library is one of the biggest places for them to hang out. But one outreach that I started with initially turned out it worked better than anything else, and that was to really outreach to the community. It turns out that most of these youth, somebody knows that they're homeless. They talk to somebody somewhere. So some of the key ones, the ones I've been working on this year, is I went and talked to all of the school nurses because somebody who winds up finding that out. The school counselors find that out. And before I started in on the school, I was really working with the other agencies in town. So I put together a flyer of this is what we do, and these are the resources we offer, and here's what homeless youth means. And here's homeless youth. Do you know any? And we flyer the whole town. We go out and post that stuff at one of the big places that we post is laundromats. Every laundromat in town, because that place all go. Soup kitchen. All the other agencies in town. I reached out to I work real close with the Chafee workers at DSS. So they're the ones that are helping the youth transition out of foster care into an independent situation. CASA. So let everyone in our community know, hey, we're here. We're open. We're here, and here's what we provide. And they send me people all the time. And the other really big one on the community side is churches. If you reach out to all the churches, because a lot of these kids, they will into a church at some point looking for help. And if all churches know where for doing these kind of resources, then they'll send them your way.
Thanks, Raven, for that answer. Really knowing your resources in your community and get the word out that you are, serving the youth too. So I have a question here, and I think it's really geared towards Chris about documenting disability. And this question has involved a student who's also in supported employment and earning some income. So the question is relating to how Social Security may count that income of a student, so under the age of 22. And Chris, do you have any, information on how a teacher can kind of document their services, whether it's in supported employment and also related to the small income that the student may make for Social Security purposes? Phone muted?
Hello?
Yeah, I hear you.
All right, good. So as far as teachers, necessarily documenting, the thing they can do is, put together some type of letter that kind of explains it, how the person, and then specifically for, security is going to look at all that stuff anyways. So, look at, I'm pretty sure that if there's some type of supportive employment, that'd be, documented with Social Security, that income will be, and it'll just look at, is it above the SGA or below? That'll be, their first step of even seeing if this person even qualifies for some of the things. So, to sort of answer that question.
I think it's a good start also if the person asking the question wants a more detailed response. Please, feel free to get in touch with your SOAR TA Center liaison who can assist you with looking up more of the Social Security rules around that. But I think Chris has it right with, having the teacher put as much down in a letter in terms of how much support the individual is receiving, how many hours that they are working in a supported environment. And then SSA, then the Social Security Administration will then calculate it, based on the information the teacher gives. So, yeah, feel free to contact your SOAR TA Center liaison or Chris, who can give you some more information too. Okay. So I have another question that came in for you to, again, creating partnerships with schools. So, Chris, do you believe better partnerships with the schools would be a great way to get SOAR introduced? So, Chris, I'll start with you, and then if any of the presenters do have any good school relationships, please share that as well.
I think it's a good place to start. Like Raven said, getting the schools to know about their programs, is a great starting point. It can point people in the right direction. So I think the more partnerships we can build between the school system and some of the things we're doing with SOAR locally makes total sense. I think as we start to try to get records from the school system, that gets a little difficult, right? Even if it's local. So if the school system really understands where these things are going, and it's really to benefit these kids, I think just there's more happens. So yeah, absolutely.
Chris, I think that's really helpful. And another question came in that does tie in nicely, to the one you just answered. It's from Lori, who runs a supported housing program for youth age 18 to 24. And again, talking about the difficulty with engaging in case management services, not going to mental health treatment, knowing that many, if not all, do have a mental health diagnosis. And she has found that, many have looked extensively at jobs, don't get them. And also, some youth that serving barely leave the house as well. Copies of their IEPs, their individual education plans from high school, but they're old. Then several, they not want to go for treatment and meet with a doctor or psychologist. And then the question ultimately, is it possible to access SSI? And I know that your presentation did cover quite a bit of this. So anything you can do to encourage her to have her folks apply for disability benefits, and what she can do to help, again, with engaging the residents of her supportive housing program.
I think, obviously, in general, getting young people approved for disability benefits, we're at a total disadvantage just because of their age. So, it's going to be much, much harder to get young adults approved for disability just because of age alone. So then you kind of compound that with the fact that the medical records might be printed, and they don't want to go see doctors and things like that. It is what it is, and we think the person has definitely meets the criteria, but they're not willing to see a doctor. I just take it longer to really work with this person and work with this case. And going to Raven's strategies with engaging people, it's you can't submit a case if there's no real medical documentation, and it just might take a little bit longer to get that person into a doctor to start kind of building those records, and really figure out connect with that youth and figure out what their value system is. And our value is getting them to see a doctor, but that might not be their value. So how do we kind of work with their value system to get them to do things like see a doctor? Knowing it's going to be very difficult and something they want to do. There are definitely ways we can do it. We've done are going out with iPads and doing visit our clinic doctors via iPads in their so we'll go occasionally go to the house, sit with the young person in their apartment with an iPad, and they'll actually do a visit with a doctor face to face, and it's a good way for the person to at least get to meet the doctor and kind of do it in a non-threatening way, and then hopefully we can kind of build some relationship and then get them into clinic.
Just re-emphasizes the importance of establishing that rapport, and youth may not be ready for mental health treatment. They may not really understand the importance of this in developing a case for disability benefit. So having that time and knowing that it may take more time is very critical. I'm going to ask Raven if he has anything he'd like to briefly, expand on the question about working with the youth, really at this point, existing mental health treatment, knowing that you do need updated status, et cetera. What are some methods that you use to talk to a teen about or youth about the importance of being in mental health treatment?
Where we really start talking about that is when they're decompensating. So it's a downside of things is really that's that we'll tend to really try and push for it. And I have to this it's like I actually engaged with our local mental health and got a case manager to come in here one day a week so that they wouldn't have to go anywhere else to engage with mental health services, so we could do the whole intake in-house. And that has really helped because, it's important when you can catch them when they really do feel the effects of how their mental health is impacting their ability to move forward in life. That's the time when you can catch them right there and get them in to see somebody, then you got a chance at moving forward much more quickly.
It's great doing it all at once. Thanks for that response. Abby has some thoughts on engaging physicians. Abby, would you like to?
Yeah, I think just kind of building off of what Raven said, it's oftentimes very important to engage physicians as well in this process. While we want to work with the youth to get them ready to seek treatment, we may often know that sometimes they may be more ready than others. So I've talked with some agencies about possibly establishing drop-in privileges at physician centers or with physicians that they typically work with. So you won't use this all the time. However, they understand that when working with this challenging population, they may be ready to go one day and may not be ready to go the other days. So having those conversations about the importance of getting the youth in to see a doctor and possibly establishing those drop-in privileges or kind of open access to a physician when the applicant is ready can be really beneficial.
Thanks, Abby. Well, I see we're running out of time, so I just, again, want to thank you for your great questions. If we didn't get to them, we'll get them answered. We'll respond to you offline and get those questions answered for you. So I just, again, extend a special thank you to all of our presenters who graciously agreed to give their time to prepare for this much requested webinar. So we encourage you to read the issue brief, and please reach out to Abigail for more information if you do want to consider adding transition age youth to your services too. So we will be available also at the end of the webinar on WebEx is an evaluation. So we really encourage you to complete the evaluation today because we do look for the ideas and your comments, to focus on some other webinars in the future. So again, for more information, please visit the SOAR website or contact the SOAR TA Center at area code 518-439-7415 or email us at soar@prainc.com. So with that, we want to thank everyone for your participation today, and thank you very much.